The reservation had been made 3 weeks ago. Rissa checked her reflection one more time in the polished metal wall outside the restaurant. Her scales caught the station's artificial lighting, shimmering green and gold the way they always did when she was nervous. She hated being nervous. Warriors of the Drakesh people did not get nervous over simple dinner meetings, but this was not simple. Her sister had arranged everything, spoken to the military officer's family, selected this expensive restaurant with its reputation for privacy and excellent food. Rissa had tried to refuse, but her sister's eyes had filled with tears. "Please," she had begged, "just try for me. For our family. You deserve happiness, Rissa." What her sister meant was that Rissa deserved normal. What she meant was that 5 years of being broken was enough. What she meant was that this officer, this Vorin, might overlook the fact that Rissa could no longer hear the beautiful harmonic songs of their people. Rissa pushed through the restaurant doors. The host greeted her with elaborate hand movements that she recognized as welcome gestures. She nodded and followed him to a table near the back. The restaurant was full of important people from many worlds. She saw a group of tall, blue-skinned Andari diplomats in one corner. 3 Pelthan merchants with their fur groomed to perfection sat near the window. Everyone looked comfortable, confident, whole. She sat down and waited. The minutes stretched. Other diners received their meals, laughed at jokes she could not hear, enjoyed conversations in the harmonic tones that had once been as natural to her as breathing. She watched their throat sacs expand and contract, watched the subtle color changes in their scales that accompanied certain emotional frequencies. She remembered how it felt to participate instead of just observe. Vorin arrived 40 minutes late. He was handsome in the traditional Drakesh way, with dark red scales and perfectly symmetrical horns. His military uniform was crisp and decorated with honors. He did not apologize for his lateness. Instead, he sat down heavily and immediately began speaking in the old way, his throat sac vibrating with harmonic tones. Rissa watched his lips carefully. She had become skilled at reading the shape of words, at catching meaning from movement. "I said good evening," Vorin repeated, this time with exaggerated slowness. His mouth moved too widely, forming each word as if speaking to a child. "Good evening," Rissa replied. Her own voice sounded strange to her now. Without being able to hear herself, she could never be sure if she was speaking at the right volume or with the right tone. She saw other diners glance their way. Vorin picked up the menu and began listing items, still speaking in harmonics that she could not perceive. Rissa leaned forward, trying to focus on his lips, but he turned the menu to show her and blocked her view of his face. When she gently pushed the menu aside to see him speak, he frowned. "I was explaining the seasonal dishes," he said. Once again, too slowly and too carefully. "I can read," Rissa said quietly. "I just need to see your face when you speak." Vorin set down the menu with what looked like a sigh. His scales flickered with the color pattern that usually accompanied frustration. "This is difficult," he said, and this time she caught every word. "I was told you were recovering, that the medical treatments were helping." "The treatments ended 2 years ago," Rissa explained. "There is no cure for this type of damage. But I have adapted. I can function perfectly well in my work as—" "I understand you were a warrior once," Vorin interrupted. "Before the incident. That must have been fulfilling." The word before hit her like a physical blow. Before the explosion that saved 60 colonists but destroyed her hearing. Before she became something less in the eyes of her people. Before she learned that Drakesh society had no place for those who could not participate in harmonic communication. "I am a diplomat now," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I negotiate trade agreements and cultural exchanges." Vorin made a sound she recognized from the movement of his throat as a non-committal hum. "That is good. Useful work, I am sure." His tone suggested he found it anything but useful. He glanced around the restaurant and Rissa knew he was checking to see who might be watching him dine with a deaf Drakesh. The meal continued painfully. Vorin spoke less and less, eventually pulling out a datapad and scrolling through messages. When the server came to take their order, Vorin spoke for both of them without asking what Rissa wanted. She said nothing. What was the point? Halfway through the main course, Vorin's datapad chimed with an alert. He looked at it, and Rissa saw relief flood his features. His scales brightened immediately. "I apologize," he said, standing abruptly. "There is an emergency at headquarters. I must leave immediately." The words were formal, but his body language screamed eagerness to escape. Rissa nodded. She did not believe there was any emergency. She watched him place credits on the table, far more than necessary, and recognized it for what it was. Payment for his obligation to her family. Payment for having endured an hour with someone broken. Please give my regards to your sister, Vareen said. Then he left, walking quickly past tables of people who definitely noticed his hasty departure. Risa sat alone, surrounded by the soft glow of the restaurant's lighting and the silent conversations of dozens of people she could not hear. She felt the weight of their pity, real or imagined. She finished her meal slowly, maintaining the dignity that had carried her through battles and negotiations. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her flee, but inside something cracked a little more. She had known the date would likely fail, but she had let herself hope. She had let herself imagine that someone might see past the disability to the person underneath. She had been wrong. When she finally left the restaurant, she held her head high. Her scales shimmered with false confidence. Tomorrow she would return to her work, to her quiet apartment, to her life of careful adaptation and low expectations. Tomorrow she would be fine. Tonight she let herself feel the weight of being unwanted. Sunlight filtered through the biodome's transparent ceiling, warming the air and making everything smell alive. Risa walked slowly along the gravel path, feeling the small stones crunch beneath her feet. She could not hear the sound they made, but she felt the vibration, and that was enough. This place had become her refuge over the past year, somewhere she could exist without judgment or pity. The biodome stretched across 3 levels of the station, housing plants from nearly 100 different worlds. Some sections were kept hot and humid for tropical species. Others were cold and dry for desert flora. Rissa's favorite area was the temperate zone, where earth plants grew alongside Velrathi ferns and Calistan moss. She found her usual bench near a cluster of flowering bushes. Their petals were a deep purple that reminded her of twilight on her homeworld. She sat and watched a small insect move from flower to flower. Life continued here, simple and uncomplicated. The plants did not care that she was deaf. They did not speak more slowly or treat her like a child. They simply existed, and she existed beside them. A shadow fell across the path. Risa looked up to see a human male approaching. He wore simple work clothes stained with dirt and carried a bucket full of tools. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community. Having joined only 15 years ago, Risa had met a few in her diplomatic work and found them odd but generally pleasant. The human walked past her bench toward the section where roses grew. Earth roses were famous throughout the galaxy for their scent and beauty, though Risa had never understood why humans also bred them to have thorns. The man knelt beside a particularly large bush and began working, trimming dead branches and checking the soil. Risa watched him work. There was something peaceful about his movements, unhurried and careful. He treated each plant like it mattered, like it deserved his full attention. After several minutes, he must have sensed her watching because he turned and smiled at her. Then he did something that shocked her completely. He set down his pruning shears and moved his hands in deliberate patterns. Risa recognized the gestures immediately as galactic sign language, the visual communication system used by many species who could not or did not vocalize. These are called roses. He signed. Would you like to smell one? Risa stared at him. Nobody signed to her. The Drakesh people barely acknowledged that sign language existed. It was considered a primitive form of communication, something used by species who had not evolved proper vocal abilities. The few times Risa had tried to learn it, her family had discouraged her, saying it would make her seem even more disabled. The human was still smiling, waiting for her response. His hands were patient and still. Risa stood and walked over to him. Up close she could see he had kind eyes and sun-weathered skin. He pointed to a rose with petals the color of fresh blood. She leaned down and breathed in. The scent was incredible, sweet and complex, and somehow sad all at once. Beautiful, she signed back, using the basic GSL she had secretly studied. The human's smile widened. My name is Owen, he signed. I take care of the earth plants here. I am Risa, she signed. Her hands felt clumsy compared to his fluid movements, but he watched patiently, never showing frustration when she had to pause to remember a sign. They talked for 3 hours. Owen explained that he had learned sign language from his younger brother, who had been born deaf. He spoke about Earth's deaf community, a concept that fascinated Risa. On Earth, deaf humans had created their own culture, their own art, their own ways of being that were not seen as lesser, but simply different. My brother always said that being deaf was not about what he could not do, Owen signed. It was about experiencing the world in his own way. Risa felt something loosen in her chest. She asked Owen about his work, about the plants, about Earth itself. He asked her about the Drakesh people, about her diplomatic work, about her favorite places on the station. He did not ask about her hearing. He did not treat her deafness as the most interesting thing about her. When the biodome's lights began to dim, signaling the station's artificial evening, Rissa realized she had been happy for the past few hours. Genuinely happy, without the constant weight of being incomplete. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Owen signed. "I could use help with the Andromedan lilies. They are very difficult to grow, and I think you have good instincts with plants." Rissa hesitated. This felt dangerous somehow, like opening herself to more disappointment. But Owen's expression was genuine, hopeful without being pitying. "Yes," she signed. "I will come back." That night in her apartment, Rissa could not stop thinking about the afternoon. She pulled up information about Earth's deaf culture on her datapad and read for hours. She learned about deaf art, deaf poetry, deaf theater. She watched videos of humans signing to each other, their hands moving in patterns so beautiful they looked like dancing. There were famous deaf humans, scientists, artists, leaders. They were not considered broken or less than. They were simply deaf, and that was acceptable. More than acceptable. Some deaf humans even rejected the idea of medical treatments to restore hearing, saying they liked themselves as they were. The concept was revolutionary to Rissa. On her world, everyone who lost their hearing desperately sought cures. Everyone was expected to try to become normal again. The idea that someone might choose to remain deaf, might embrace it as part of their identity, had never occurred to her. She returned to the biodome the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Owen taught her more sign language, including some human-specific signs that had no equivalent in GSL. She taught him about Drakesh plants and their symbolic meanings. They worked together, hands in the soil, communicating in silence that felt fuller than any conversation she had had in years. Owen showed her videos from Earth. She watched deaf musicians who felt the vibrations of sound and translated them into movement. She saw deaf poets whose hands painted pictures in the air. She learned about a whole world where being deaf did not mean being incomplete. Why do humans accept this so easily? Rissa signed one afternoon. "My people see deafness as a tragedy, something to fix or hide." Owen thought for a moment before responding. "Humans struggled with this too long ago. But we learned that difference is not deficiency. We learned that accommodating everyone makes society stronger, not weaker." He smiled. "Also, humans are stubborn. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we find a way to do it anyway." Rissa laughed, a sound she still could not fully control without hearing herself. But Owen's expression told her it was a good laugh. As weeks passed, Rissa found herself thinking about Owen even when she was not in the biodome. She looked forward to their time together. She admired the way he moved, the way he touched the plants with such care, the way he looked at her like she was complete. One evening, as they finished watering the new saplings, Owen signed something that made Rissa's heart race. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Not perfect despite being deaf. Not brave for coping, just perfect, as she was." Rissa looked into his eyes and saw that he meant it completely. In that moment, surrounded by flowers from 100 worlds, she began to believe that maybe she was not broken after all. Maybe she was just different. And maybe, just maybe, different could be enough. The Andromedan lily finally bloomed after 6 weeks of careful attention. Rissa and Owen stood side by side, admiring the delicate blue petals that seemed to glow from within. Owen had shown her how to measure the exact pH of the soil, how to provide just the right amount of shade during the station's artificial afternoon. Together they had coaxed this stubborn plant into flowering. "We did it," Owen signed, grinning. "I was ready to give up 3 times, but you insisted we keep trying." "Drakesh warriors do not give up on difficult tasks," Rissa signed back. Then she paused. "Though I am not really a warrior anymore." Owen's expression grew serious. "You fought to save lives. You still fight every day to be treated with respect. That sounds like a warrior to me." They had been meeting in the biodome every day for 2 months now. What had started as casual companionship had grown into something deeper. Rissa shared stories of her homeworld, of the crystalline cities and the singing festivals she could no longer fully experience. Owen told her about Earth, about oceans and forests, and the small garden his brother had kept before he died. Daniel loved tomatoes. Owen signed one afternoon. He grew 12 different varieties. He said each one tasted like a different story. His hands slowed, heavy with memory. He got sick when he was 16. The illness took him fast. Before he died, he made me promise 2 things. Rissa waited, watching Owen's face. First, keep signing. Keep the conversation going with the deaf community. Second, keep growing things. Keep life going. Owen looked at the plants around them. So I became a gardener. I learned galactic sign language. And when I see you here working with these plants, I think Daniel would have liked you very much. I wish I could have met him, Rissa signed. You remind me of him, Owen signed. Not because you are deaf. Because you are stubborn and brilliant and you love making things grow. Also because you have that same look when someone tells you that you cannot do something. What look? The look that says you will prove them wrong and you will enjoy doing it. Rissa felt warmth spread through her chest. She had been told so many times what she could not do. Could not fight. Could not participate in traditional ceremonies. Could not fully represent her people. Owen was the first person who seemed interested in what she could do instead. She began teaching him about Drakesh culture. She explained the complex honor systems, the way their scales changed color with strong emotions, the importance of family lineage. Owen listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly trying to understand. Do you have any signs that do not exist in GSL? Owen asked one day. Concepts that are uniquely Drakesh? Rissa thought about it. Then she showed him a gesture she had created, a combination of movements that meant honor debt fulfilled, in a way that the simple GSL sign for repayment could not capture. Owen practiced it carefully, and soon they were creating new signs together, blending human and Drakesh concepts into something that belonged to both of them. But as their friendship deepened, the outside world began to intrude. Rissa's sister discovered that she was spending time with a human gardener. The confrontation happened in Rissa's apartment, with her sister's scales flashing angry orange. You rejected Vorin, her sister said, speaking slowly so Rissa could read her lips. Vorin, who comes from a respected military family. Vorin, who is willing to overlook your condition. And for what? For a human who tends plants? Owen does not overlook my deafness, Rissa said carefully. He accepts it. There is a difference. He is a human, her sister practically shouted. They have been part of our community for barely 15 years. They are sentimental and weak, and they have nothing to offer us. Owen has offered me more respect in 2 months than I have received from our own people in 5 years, Rissa said, her voice steady despite her anger. Her sister's expression softened slightly. I know you have struggled. I know our people have not always understood. But this human cannot give you what you need. He cannot restore your place in society. He cannot give you back what you lost. I do not want back what I lost, Rissa said, surprising herself with the truth of it. I want something different. Something new. Her sister left unsatisfied, and Rissa knew there would be more confrontations to come. The Drakesh community on the station was small and traditional. Word would spread about her inappropriate friendship. There would be consequences. She almost did not return to the biodome the next day, almost let fear and social pressure win. But when she walked through the entrance and saw Owen carefully transplanting seedlings, something in her settled. This was where she wanted to be. You look troubled, Owen signed when he saw her. Rissa explained about her sister, about the social pressure, about how her people viewed humans. Owen listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. I understand if you need to stop coming here, he signed when she finished. I do not want to make your life harder. You make my life better, Rissa signed. That is the problem. My people do not understand how a human gardener could make a Drakesh diplomat's life better. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then he signed, What do you want? It was such a simple question, but nobody had asked Rissa what she wanted in years. Everyone told her what she needed, what she should do, what was best for her. Owen just asked what she wanted. I want to keep coming here, Rissa signed. I want to keep talking with you. I want to keep learning about your world and sharing mine. I want... She paused, afraid to sign the rest. What? Owen prompted gently. I want to stop feeling broken, Rissa signed. And when I am with you, I do not feel broken. I feel whole. Owen reached out and took her hand. It was the first time they had touched beyond accidental brushes while gardening. His skin was warm and rough from working with soil and tools. You are whole. He signed with his free hand, awkward with one-handed signing but determined. You have always been whole. Your people just do not know how to see it. They stood there in the biodome, surrounded by plants from 100 worlds, holding hands across the space between their cultures. The station's artificial sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Rissa felt something shift inside her, like a seed finally deciding to germinate. I do not know what happens next, Rissa signed. My people will not approve. There will be pressure to stop seeing you. Then we face it together, Owen signed, if you want to. Risa looked at this human who had shown her kindness when her own people showed only pity. This gardener who saw strength where others saw disability. This man who made her feel like herself again. Yes, she signed. Together. That evening, walking back to her apartment, Risa felt something she had not felt in 5 years. She felt hope real and solid and growing. Like a seed planted in good soil, it would need time and care to flourish. But it was there, alive and reaching toward the light. The summons came on a gray morning, delivered by an official courier. Risa read the message 3 times, feeling cold despite the comfortable temperature of her apartment. The Drakesh Council requested her presence at their next session. They wanted to discuss her continuing suitability for diplomatic service. She knew what this meant. Someone had complained. Probably several someones. The whispers about her friendship with Owen had grown louder over the past month. Other Drakesh on the station had begun treating her with even more distance than before. Her sister refused to speak to her. The council chamber was designed in traditional Drakesh style, with high ceilings and walls covered in crystal panels that would have resonated beautifully with harmonic speech. Risa stood in the center while 7 council members sat in a semicircle around her. She could see their throat sacs moving, could see the color shifts in their scales, but she could only catch fragments of their conversation by reading lips. Finally, the head counselor addressed her directly, speaking with exaggerated clarity. "We have concerns about your ability to represent our people in upcoming negotiations. I have successfully completed 12 diplomatic missions in the past 3 years," Risa replied, keeping her voice calm. "My success rate is higher than most of the junior diplomats." "For simple trade agreements, yes," another counselor interjected. "But we face a more complex situation now. The Quarathi Collective has expressed interest in establishing formal relations. This is a crucial opportunity for our people." Risa knew about the Quarathi. They were a 3-caste species with an incredibly complex communication system. The dominant caste used sonic frequencies beyond even normal Drakesh range. The second caste communicated through bioluminescent patterns on their skin. The third caste used a combination of chemical signals and touch. "We cannot risk sending a deaf negotiator to such sensitive talks," the head counselor said. "Surely you understand? The sonic communication alone." "I understand that you have already decided I am unsuitable," Risa interrupted. "May I speak?" The counselors looked surprised by her directness, but they nodded. "You are correct that I cannot hear the sonic frequencies," Risa said. "But I would argue that previous negotiators have been equally limited. They focused only on the dominant caste's vocalizations and ignored the other 2 castes entirely. Perhaps that is why previous talks have failed." The counselors exchanged glances. Risa pressed on. "I propose a different approach. A team that can address all 3 communication modes simultaneously. I will coordinate and focus on the bioluminescent patterns and touch chemical signals. Others can handle the sonic component. Together we will be the first to truly communicate with all 3 castes as equals." "This is unprecedented," one counselor said. "So is having a deaf diplomat," Risa countered. "Let me show you what unprecedented can accomplish." The debate lasted an hour. Finally, the head counselor raised his hand for silence. "We will permit a test. There is a minor trade delegation of Quarathi arriving next week. If you can successfully negotiate a preliminary agreement with them, we will consider allowing you to participate in the larger talks." It was not approval, but it was a chance. Risa accepted. That evening, she went straight to the biodome. Owen was repotting some earth plants called lavender. The scent was calming, and Risa needed calm right now. She explained the situation to him, her hands moving frantically as she signed. Owen listened patiently, then set down his tools. "You are worried you will fail," he signed. "I am worried they are right," Risa signed back. "What if I cannot do this? What if my deafness really does make me unsuitable?" Owen shook his head firmly. "The problem is not your deafness. The problem is that they have only ever done things one way. You are showing them a new way, and new ways are scary. How can I prepare? I have 1 week. The same way we got the Andromedan lily to bloom," Owen signed. "Patience, careful observation, and refusing to give up when things get difficult." They spent the next week preparing. Owen helped Risa research everything about the Quarathi. They discovered that previous negotiations had indeed focused almost entirely on the sonic caste representatives, treating the other 2 castes as mere attendants. No wonder the talks had failed. The Quarathi valued consensus among all 3 castes. Owen helped her practice. He would flash lights and patterns while simultaneously describing different negotiation scenarios. Risa learned to split her attention, to watch for visual cues while processing information. It was exhausting, but she improved daily. You know, Owen signed one evening. My brother used to say that deaf people are better at paying attention. Hearing people get lazy. They rely on sound and miss everything else. But deaf people learn to watch to notice small details others miss. Did that help him? Rissa signed. He became an incredible artist, Owen signed. He saw colors and movements that others walked right past. He painted the world the way he experienced it, and it was beautiful. On the day of the negotiation, Rissa arrived early. She had assembled a small team, a specialist in sonic communication, another in chemical analysis, and herself to coordinate and focus on visual signals. The Korathi delegation arrived precisely on time. There were 6 of them. 2 were tall and had vocal organs that pulsed with sound. 2 were shorter with skin that rippled with light patterns. 2 were covered in fine sensory hairs and emitted subtle scents. The sonic specialists immediately addressed Rissa's team member, as expected. But Rissa stepped forward and approached the light cast representatives. She had learned a few basic Korathi light patterns. She made her skin scales shift color in the pattern that meant greeting with respect to all. The light cast representatives stopped moving. Their patterns shifted rapidly. Rissa's team member translated, "They are surprised. No Drakesh has ever greeted them directly before." "Tell them I see them," Rissa said. "Tell them all 3 castes are equally important to me." As the negotiation proceeded, Rissa noticed something the sonic specialist missed. The light caste representative was flashing a pattern that contradicted what the sonic caste representative was saying. The sonic caste was agreeing to trade terms, but the light caste was signaling disagreement. Rissa called for a pause. "I believe there is a misunderstanding," she said carefully. "The light caste appears to have concerns about the proposal." The Korathi delegates went very still. Then all 6 of them began communicating with each other, sounds and lights and scents mixing together. Finally, the sonic caste representative spoke. "You are correct. We were testing you. Previous negotiators never noticed when our castes disagreed. They only listened to us and assumed we spoke for all. You are the first to truly see all of us." The negotiation continued with new respect. When disagreements arose, Rissa made sure all 3 castes were consulted. The resulting trade agreement was small but significant. More importantly, the Korathi delegation asked specifically to work with Rissa on future talks. When Rissa reported back to the council, they could not deny her success. The head counselor looked at her with something that might have been respect. "You will lead the main negotiation team," he said, "but understand this is highly irregular. Do not make us regret this decision." Rissa left the council chamber and went straight to the biodome. Owen was waiting for her, and when she told him what had happened, he pulled her into a tight hug. "I knew you could do it," he signed when they separated. "I could not have done it without you," Rissa signed back. "You taught me that different perspectives are valuable, not deficient." They stood close together, and Rissa felt her heart beating fast. Owen reached out and gently touched her face, his fingers tracing the edge of her scales. "I am proud of you," he signed. "You are extraordinary." "You saw me when no one else could," Rissa signed. And then they were kissing, gentle and perfect and right. When they separated, Rissa felt complete in a way she had never felt before, not even before she lost her hearing. But reality returned quickly. "My people will never accept this," she signed. "A Drakesh diplomat and a human gardener. It is too much." Owen's expression was serious but not sad. "Do you care about them accepting it or about being happy?" Rissa did not have an answer, not yet. But as she walked home that night, she knew she would have to choose soon. The path of acceptance or the path of happiness. Maybe if she was very brave, she could find a way to walk both. Preparations for the main Korathi negotiation consumed 3 weeks. Rissa assembled her team carefully, choosing specialists who understood that this would require a different approach. She spent hours studying Korathi culture, their history of failed negotiations with other species, their unique 3-caste decision-making process. Every evening, she retreated to the biodome. Owen had created a quiet corner near the Earth section where they could work together. He helped her practice splitting her attention between multiple visual inputs, setting up lights and screens that mimicked the Korathi communication patterns. Sometimes they worked in focused silence. Other times they talked about everything except the negotiation. "Tell me about Earth Gardens," Rissa signed one evening, exhausted from practice. Owen's face lit up. "My grandmother had a garden. Vegetables, flowers, herbs all mixed together. She said good gardens are communities, not armies in rows. Everything helps everything else grow. Like how tomatoes grow better near basil." Rissa signed. She had been reading about Earth agriculture. Exactly, Owen signed, surprised and pleased. You have been studying. I want to understand your world, Rissa signed. The way you try to understand mine. They sat together on the bench, surrounded by the smell of growing things. Owen took her hand and Rissa leaned against his shoulder. These moments of peace felt precious, stolen from a universe that seemed determined to keep them apart. The main negotiation began on a humid morning. The full Quarathi delegation consisted of 18 members, 6 from each caste. They arrived in perfect synchronization, their movements coordinated in a way that suggested constant communication across all 3 modes. The negotiation chamber had been specially prepared. Traditional harmonic resonators for the sonic communications, full-spectrum lighting for the bioluminescent patterns, air circulation systems to carry chemical signals. Rissa had insisted on all of it, arguing that respecting all 3 castes equally was essential. The first day was cautious, both sides establishing protocols and boundaries. Rissa's sonic specialist handled the verbal agreements while Rissa herself watched the light caste representatives carefully. Her chemical analyst monitored scent patterns and reported findings through a discrete data pad. On the second day, the real work began. The Quarathi wanted access to Drakesh crystal technology. The Drakesh wanted access to Quarathi biocomputing resources. The terms seemed straightforward until Rissa noticed a problem. The sonic caste representatives were agreeing to standard trade percentages, but the light caste was flashing patterns that suggested they wanted something more, not higher percentages, something different entirely. Rissa called for a recess and consulted with her team. What are the light caste asking for? She asked. Her analyst studied the recordings. It is not a demand. It is more like a wish. They keep repeating patterns that mean knowledge sharing and mutual growth. Rissa understood. The Quarathi did not just want trade. They wanted partnership, the kind where both species learned from each other and grew together. It was a concept her own people rarely considered. Trade was trade, clean and transactional. When negotiations resumed, Rissa addressed all 3 castes directly. I believe there has been a miscommunication. You seek not just trade but collaboration. You want our people to work together, to share knowledge, to grow together like plants in a good garden. All 18 Quarathi went very still. Their sonic caste speaker's throat pulsed rapidly. How did you understand this? No other species has ever understood this. Because I learned to pay attention to all forms of communication, Rissa said. Because I learned that the most important messages are not always the loudest ones. The negotiation shifted after that. Instead of arguing over percentages, they discussed joint research projects. Instead of trading resources, they talked about exchanging scholars and artists. The Quarathi opened up in ways they never had with other species. On the 5th day, they reached an agreement that was unprecedented in scope. Not just trade, but a formal cultural and scientific partnership. The Quarathi delegation stood together, all 18 of them, and made a gesture that combined all 3 communication modes into one unified message: profound respect. When Rissa reported the success to the Drakesh Council, they were stunned. This agreement would elevate their people's standing in the galactic community significantly. Even the counselors who had doubted her had to acknowledge what she had accomplished. This is remarkable work, the head counselor said. You have proven yourself beyond any doubt. You will be recognized at the formal celebration next week. This is a great honor for our people. But there was something in his tone that made Rissa suspicious. She waited. Of course, he continued, such a prominent position requires certain standards. We trust you understand the need for propriety in your personal life, particularly regarding associations that might reflect poorly on our people. There it was, the price of acceptance. Stop seeing Owen, and she could have respect, honor, success. Rissa said nothing, just nodded and left. She went straight to the biodome, her mind churning. Owen was planting new seedlings, his hands gentle in the soil. When he saw her face, he set everything aside. She told him about the negotiation, about the success, about the price of that success. Owen listened, his expression growing sad but not surprised. You should take the recognition, he signed. You earned it. You deserve it, even if it means losing you. Rissa signed. Owen smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I just want you to be happy. Whatever that looks like. Rissa felt anger flare inside her. Do not be noble. Tell me what you want. I want you to be free, Owen signed. Free to choose without guilt. Free to be yourself. If that means being with me, I will be here. If it means accepting their honor and their rules, I will understand. That is not fair, Rissa signed. You are making this my choice alone. It is your choice, Owen signed gently. Your life. Your people. Your future. I cannot make this decision for you. They sat in silence for a long time. Around them, plants from 100 worlds grew together, unconcerned with politics or propriety. A Drakesh flower bloomed next to an earth rose, and neither cared about the impossibility of it. Finally, Rissa signed, I spent 5 years trying to become who I was before I lost my hearing, trying to fit back into a space that no longer existed. You taught me to become who I am now. That person does not accept ultimatums. What does that mean? Owen signed. Rissa stood up, her decision crystallizing. It means I will go to their celebration. I will accept their recognition. And I will tell them exactly what I think about their conditions. The formal celebration was held in the station's grand hall. Dignitaries from a dozen species attended. Rissa wore traditional Drakesh ceremonial robes, her scales polished to gleaming perfection. The head counselor gave a long speech about her achievements, about how she represented the best of their people. When it was her turn to speak, Rissa walked to the podium. The crowd expected a brief, humble acceptance. Instead, she did something that made several council members stand up in shock. She began signing her speech, with translators providing voiceover for those who did not know GSL. I am honored by this recognition, she signed, but I must speak a truth. For 5 years, I believed my deafness made me less than whole. I believed I needed to compensate for my disability, to work twice as hard to deserve half as much respect. I was wrong. The hall was completely silent. My deafness did not make me a better negotiator, she continued, but the skills I learned because of my deafness did. I learned to watch carefully, to notice what others miss, to value all forms of communication, not just the loudest. These skills allowed me to succeed where others failed. She paused, her hand steady. A human taught me this, a gardener who grows earth plants in our biodome. He showed me that difference is not deficiency. That accommodation makes us stronger, not weaker. That being whole does not mean being like everyone else. Rissa looked directly at the Drakesh Council members. I will continue my work as a diplomat. I will continue to serve our people with everything I have. But I will not hide who I am or who I care about to make others comfortable. That is my truth. Then she did something that made several Kwarathi delegates signal approval. She gestured toward the entrance where Owen stood in simple work clothes, completely out of place among the formal attire. She signed, This human taught me that being whole means being truly yourself. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some applauded, others looked scandalized. The Kwarathi delegation signaled unanimous approval, their 3 castes moving in perfect harmony. Several younger Drakesh in the crowd began signing to each other, their hands moving in excited patterns. Rissa left the podium and walked to Owen. The crowd parted around them, some in respect, some in shock. She did not care. She took his hand, and together they walked out of the celebration into the quiet corridors of the station. That was brave, Owen signed when they were alone. That was necessary, Rissa signed back. I am tired of choosing between happiness and honor. I want both. I deserve both. What happens now? Rissa smiled. Now we go tend the garden. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. They walked to the biodome together, hands linked. 2 beings from different worlds growing something beautiful in the space between. 3 days after the celebration, the Drakesh Council summoned Rissa again. She entered the chamber with her head high, prepared for consequences. The head counselor looked tired, his scales dull with stress. Your speech has caused significant disruption, he said without preamble. Young people are questioning our traditions. Several families are demanding we censure you. Others are praising your courage. I spoke truth, Rissa replied calmly. Yes, the counselor agreed, surprising her. You did. And that is precisely the problem. Or perhaps the solution. We are not certain yet. He explained that the Kwarathi had sent an official message. They wanted to establish a new position, a dedicated liaison for accessibility and multimodal communication. They had specifically requested Rissa for the role. Furthermore, they had suggested that such a position could serve as a model for other species partnerships. This is unprecedented, the counselor said, but so is everything about this situation. The council is divided. Some see this as an opportunity. Others see it as abandoning our traditions. What do you see? Rissa asked. The old counselor was quiet for a moment. I see that the galaxy is changing faster than we are. I see that species who adapt will thrive, and those who cling to old ways will be left behind. I see a young diplomat who succeeded because she was different, not despite it. He paused. I also see that my own daughter has been learning sign language in secret. She was at your speech. She asked me why we never taught it to you after your injury. Rissa felt something shift in the room. The council will offer you a choice, the counselor continued. Accept the ambassadorship to the Central Worlds. Prestigious, powerful, everything you have worked for, but it requires full commitment to traditional protocols. No complications, or, Rissa asked, though she already knew. Or take this new position the Quarathi proposed. Create something that has never existed before. Work with other species to develop better communication across all abilities. Lower prestige, uncertain future, but it would be yours on your terms. Rissa did not need to think long. I choose the new position. I choose to build something better. The counselor nodded slowly. I thought you might. You are dismissed. As she turned to leave, he added, For what it matters, I think my daughter would have liked to hear your speech years ago. Perhaps many of our young people would have. Over the following months, everything changed. Rissa established the Galactic Accessibility Initiative, working with representatives from a dozen species. The Quarathi provided funding and resources. Other species, including the humans, contributed expertise and support. Owen's biodome became the unofficial headquarters. They expanded it, adding sections that could accommodate beings with different sensory abilities. Gardens that could be experienced through touch, through chemical signals, through vibration patterns in the ground. Young Drakesh began visiting, curious about sign language and about the human who had somehow become important in their community. Owen taught classes in the biodome, showing them how to communicate across different modes. Some came to learn. Others came because they too were deaf or had disabilities they had been taught to hide. A movement began, small but growing. Deaf Drakesh, who had been isolated, started connecting with each other. They created their own signs, their own art, their own community. Rissa watched it grow with amazement. She had wanted acceptance. Instead, she had sparked a revolution. One evening, she found Owen in the rose section, carefully examining a new hybrid he had been developing. She watched him work, his hands gentle and sure. What are you thinking about? Owen signed when he noticed her watching. About how different my life is from 1 year ago, Rissa signed. About how I thought I knew what I wanted. What did you want? To go back to who I was before? To be accepted by my people? To fit in? She moved closer to him. I was wrong. I did not want to go back. I wanted to go forward. To become someone new. Owen smiled. And who are you now? I am Rissa, she signed. Diplomat, advocate, deaf, in love with a human gardener. All of it together. All of it whole. She had not signed the last part before. About being in love. Owen's eyes widened, then softened. I love you too, he signed. All of you. Together. Whole. They kissed in the fading light, surrounded by flowers that should not have been able to grow together but did anyway. The work was not easy. The Galactic Accessibility Initiative faced resistance and skepticism. Some species saw it as unnecessary accommodation, others worried about costs or complexity, but slowly change happened. The station installed visual alert systems for emergencies. Restaurants began training staff in basic sign language. Documents were made available in multiple formats. Small changes that added up to enormous differences in people's lives. A year after that first speech, Rissa was invited to speak at the Galactic Assembly. This time the invitation was not despite her deafness, but because of her unique perspective. She spoke about how accessibility benefited everyone, not just those with disabilities, about how diversity and experience led to innovation and understanding. The Quarathi delegation attended, all 3 castes signaling approval throughout her speech. Several other species expressed interest in similar initiatives. The human delegation, led by an ambassador who was herself a wheelchair user, pledged full support. After the speech, Owen met her outside the assembly hall. He looked proud and a little overwhelmed by the crowd of important people wanting to speak with her. Getting used to this? Rissa signed teasingly. I preferred when you just came to help me with the lilies, Owen signed back. But I am proud of you. Always. They walked back to the biodome together as they did most evenings now. Some things had changed. Rissa had a larger apartment, an official title, responsibilities that spanned multiple star systems. But some things stayed the same. The quiet evenings working with plants, the conversations in sign language that felt more intimate than any spoken words, the sense of being understood completely and without reservation. 2 years after their first meeting, Owen presented Rissa with a rose unlike any other in the biodome. Its petals shimmered with the same iridescent quality as Drakesh scales, shifting between green and gold depending on the light. I have been working on this since we met. Owen signed. I wanted to create something that captured how I see you. Strong, beautiful, unique, perfect, exactly as you are. The rose's name tag read, The Risa Rose, a hybrid of earth and stars, beautiful in all its forms. Risa felt tears on her face, something that rarely happened to Drakesh. It is perfect, she signed. Like you, Owen signed. Like us. The biodome had expanded to cover 5 levels now. Beings from dozens of species came to experience gardens designed for all senses. Deaf children played in sections with vibrating wind chimes that they could feel through the ground. Blind visitors explored gardens mapped by scent and texture. Everyone found beauty in their own way. And in the center of it all, a small section remained unchanged. Earth roses growing next to Drakesh crystal flowers. A bench where a deaf diplomat and a human gardener still met every evening to tend plants and tend each other. Young Drakesh, who visited, would sometimes ask Risa if she regretted losing her hearing. If she wished she could have stayed a warrior. If she mourned what she had lost. I lost my hearing, Risa would sign in response. But I found myself. I found purpose. I found love. I found a whole community of people I never knew existed. Would I trade any of that to hear again? She would pause, looking at Owen, at the gardens they had grown together, at the young people learning that different did not mean less. No, she would sign. I would not trade any of it. This is who I am meant to be. This is where I am meant to be. Exactly as I am. And in the evening light, surrounded by flowers from 100 worlds, Risa and Owen would work side by side. 2 beings from different worlds, speaking different languages, experiencing life in different ways. Together, they had grown something beautiful. Not despite their differences, but because of them. The garden between worlds flourished, tended by love and watered by the belief that every being deserves to grow exactly as they are. And at its heart, a rose that shimmered like dragon scales bloomed eternal, perfect in all its forms.